I wanted to give a lecture kind of on forcing moves and the initiatives. So first of all, can anyone tell me what a forcing move is? Yes?
A move that leaves your opponent with few choices.
Right. You're basically attacking something usually, right? Or checking them or doing something. What's the power of a forcing move? Yeah, Gracia.
It makes the player do something
Right. You don't have to worry about, oh, they can just play whatever they want. They have very few options. So you're kind of controlling the action, controlling the game. Now, sometimes, for example, if you're able to play a lot of forcing moves out of the opening, it means that you get to attack a lot of their pieces. It means that you get to develop your pieces with gain of time. And time is something I think that in a chess game people forget about. They don't think of time as a factor. But for example, if you can get out 4 pieces to your opponent's 1, that's a big time advantage, right? Because you have all these pieces out and they don't have them out yet. And this next game illustrates it very well. So how many of you know who Paul Morphy is? Very good. He was basically widely considered just the best player in the world, usually by even quite a ways, around mid-1800s. Now, if he were to play today, he probably wouldn't even be master strength. But for that time, and considering no one ever taught him, like you guys are being taught now, or have been for chess, it's really quite amazing that he got to the level he got. And his games are actually very useful because at that time, a lot of players just took material. So for example, if their opponents offered them material, they'd take it. And normally that's a good policy, but he was very good at finding forcing moves, and he didn't mind giving up material for the initiative. So before we start the game, actually, can anyone tell me what the initiative is? Because that's kind of the key to this game. It's not easy to explain. The way I would describe it is, it basically means you're forcing the action. So if you're the one playing lots of forcing moves and your opponent's defending, you have the initiative. And it's usually very important if you can maintain it, if you can keep the initiative and not give it up, it's usually a very good thing for you. And this game, White took the initiative basically on move 3 and didn't give it up for the whole game. So that's kind of what happened here. So let's start the game. So e4, e5, knight f3, queen f6. How many of you like this move? I don't like it either. Can anyone tell me why? Blue shirt, yeah.
It opens up your queens to attacks and exposes your queen.
Very good. So the queen is a little bit exposed here. The king a little bit, but the king's not so bad. But I would say that the queen's a little bit exposed. So almost always you'd rather not get out your queen early. You'd rather defend the pawn with the knight, with the pawn, bring this knight out. Incidentally, you'd almost never ever want to defend with your f-pawn. Very bad idea. And in this case, believe it or not, there's a sacrifice that's actually quite strong. And black ends up getting either attacked heavily or giving up their rook like this. So do not bring your f-pawn out early. Almost always a bad idea. Alright, so queen f6 was played. White developed. So the knight might come here. Black didn't want that. They played here. So from this point on, basically, White takes the initiative and never lets it go the rest of the game. So every single move from here on out, for the most part, is an attacking move, which is rather impressive. It's very rare that you can maintain an initiative for that long. But one of the things Morphy was great at, and what we can learn from, is that he was really great at taking the initiative and just never giving it up, and always attacking his opponent. So first he played this move, and black recaptured. So first quiz for you guys. What moves would you consider here? Yep. Bishop g5. It's a great move to consider. I like how just because your opponent took your pawn, you didn't automatically assume you had to recapture, like a lot of people would. You wanted to counterattack the queen. The one drawback I'd say to bishop g5 is that the queen would move, and now the knight's kind of tied to the bishop now. So you could play queen takes pawn, and I think your position's very good. Bishop g5 I think should be a fine move, but it wasn't what was played. He played a similar move though. Anyone have any ideas besides you? Yeah.
The other bishop?
the other bishop could move, but then the knight would simply be taken. So I'd say that you don't want to give black an opportunity to take your piece, right? What other attacking move do you have besides bishop g5?
Pawn to e5.
Very nice. The queen's exposed, right? So you move the pawn up to attack the queen. Very nice. So the queen moves. So, question now is, do you take back this pawn? Yep. Very nice. He still doesn't want this pawn. Now, queen takes d4 is a perfectly good move. If a student of mine were to show me this game and be like, yeah, I played queen takes d4, I'd say, good job. Good move. And we'd move on. But again, Morphy hated to give up the initiative. He always wants to be attacking every move. So he played bishop d3. But his opponent was like, well, what are you doing, man? Letting me take your pawn for free? But this move's very risky because white has all these pieces out, right? So what does white play? This move's pretty easy, yeah.
Bishop to f1.
I don't know about that move because then I'd take your rook. Remember, your rook's attacked. You don't want to give up your rook. Rook g1, yep. So the queen is under attack. It only has one square. So now what? Yep.
Bishop f5.
Bishop f5 looks like a nice move, but there's a big drawback to this. Can you figure out what it is? Yeah. So be careful. Before you suggest a move, make sure your piece can't just be captured for free, right? And this goes when you're playing a game. It's so nice to want to be able to attack stuff, but make sure your opponent can't just capture a valuable piece of yours. Taking the g2 pawn is annoying, but it opens up your rook, right? It gets your rook out, and it's just a pawn. A pawn is not nearly as valuable.
Rook g3.
All right. Rook g3 looks like a good move to me. That's what was played. Queen move back. Yep.
r5.
Very nice. Don't want to give up that initiative, right? But now what? There are, by the way, keep in mind, just because not all of his moves are necessarily the only good ones. So if you suggest a move and it wasn't played, don't think, oh, I got it wrong. Think, oh, maybe my move was good too. Yep.
Bishop to f5.
That's the move I like, because it cuts off the options. The queen would have to move back here, which looks like an awful square, right? Because you're walking into a potential discovered attack. But Morphy ended up choosing this one. But I like your move better. So, queen moves back. Now finally, white takes this pawn. After all that. But, what's the difference? What did white gain by delaying the capture? Other than losing his g-pawn. What did white gain? Yes? Development, right? White's so well developed now. The knights are out. The rook's out. This bishop can get out very easily. Black's pieces are all sitting at home, twiddling their thumbs. Not exactly what black wants to be doing. Black wants to be getting pieces out, right? And because he's being attacked every move, he can't just give up a queen, right? So every move he has to move his queen and allow white to keep attacking. So this is why the initiative and forcing moves are so important. Because you don't give your opponent a chance to catch up with you, to get out their pieces, to do what they want to do. And it's why you really want to, if you can take the initiative, it can be such an important thing. So black retreated the queen. So now what? Yep.
nf5.
nf5, I like this move a lot. It would allow queen takes e5 check, but I think that this looks very risky. White could play just bishop e3, for example, or bishop e2. And I don't know. I mean, I'd say with the discovery is possible. Knight takes g7 check is a threat. I'd say that black's position is very risky. So I like knight f5 a lot. It's not what was played, though. This was the one move where he didn't make a huge threat. He did make a threat, actually, but he didn't make a huge threat. Yep.
Bishop c4.
Bishop c4 looks like a nice move to me, but he didn't play it. But again, I'd say good move, just not his choice. He wanted to eye this weak square. See how that square looks kind of juicy? Just kind of weak upon attacking it? Yeah? You're very excited when you raise your hand. I've noticed this. Bishop f4 looks like a nice move to me. It defends the pawn, eyes the square, not what he played. Yep. Very nice. His idea is that he wants knight d6 check. Very tempting, right? So his opponent should really try to be developing something, but instead he keeps attacking. So actually, Morphy's next move is probably not a good one, but it is kind of continuing with the theme of the game. Curious what you guys would play. Yeah, orange shirt.
I think he played knight to d6.
This is actually what I think is the best move. The knight goes to d6 check. The king would have to go here, and then you could do all sorts of things. Bishop to c4, a move like this looks real tempting, attacking f7. You have all sorts of good moves. I like your move the best. But he played, I think, a worse one, knight f5, which looks like a great move. And it turned out really well. But actually, it's kind of interesting. And when I've shown this game before, and I never pointed this out because I wanted the game to have a nice flow to it. But one of the things you'll notice, even when you check out games of really strong players, they all make mistakes, right? So you never want to assume that all their moves are perfect or all their moves are, oh, must be the best and any move I come up with has to be worse. I think knight f5 is a mistake. Question is why? Yep.
Because the pawn can just take a free rook.
The pawn could take a rook, but I would hardly call it free because your queen is hanging. So rook, yes. Free, no. There's a very steep price to that rook. Very few people could afford a rook like that. Anyone else? Now, what has been the theme of this lecture, would you say? Attacking and forcing moves. Does black have a forcing move of his own? Yes. What's most forcing? Like when I say forcing moves, what's the first thing that popped to mind? Captures and what else? What else is really forcing? Yeah? Checks. So always look, do I have any checks? Does my opponent have any checks? If your opponent plays a check and you didn't see it, it means you didn't think long enough on your previous move. Because you never ever want to miss if your opponent can put you in check. So, does black have a check here?
Yes.
Yep. Not what was played. Queen b4 check. And this move would have been a nasty shock to Morphy, who was otherwise playing a great game. Because not only is it a check, and people who attended my lecture just now should know what this is. What is this? A fork. So it's not only a check, it's a fork. Now white can get out of this fork by playing the knight back, but now black can simply take this rook. Now, it wouldn't surprise me, because white's position's so good, it wouldn't surprise me if there's some magical solution, but this would have been a pretty big miss, right? So you see how even someone as strong as Morphy can make mistakes and play, slightly careless moves. So knight f5 I don't think was the best move, but his opponent didn't catch it, played queen e6. So the lesson you can learn also from this is that no matter how ugly your position looks, no matter how bad you think things are, even strong opponents can mess up. But you have to make sure you get that chance. Because after this one move, this one mistake, black never ever gets a chance to get back in the game. And from here on out, he plays a really wonderful game. So what does he play now? Yep.
Bishop c4.
Bishop c4 I think is a really nice move. Not what he played. There's a cool trick with bishop c4. What happens if I take your bishop?
Knight d6.
Right. And notice how it's a nice fork, right? The only reason I'd say he didn't play bishop c4 is because then there's maybe this move. And that could be annoying, because now there's no en passant, because queen takes knight check. Or even queen takes bishop now, because maybe. Actually, no, queen takes bishop. There's a pawn in the way, but you can get rid of your pawn. And then your knight has d6. Kind of clever, huh? But okay, queen takes knight check would be annoying. But yeah, after d5 takes... And you could play knight d6 check, and it's probably still decent. But I think white played a slightly more accurate move here. Any guesses? It's a very direct move, nothing too fancy. Yep. Rook takes g7 is nice because if bishop takes, knight takes check. That's your idea, right? However, you never want to assume. My old teacher used to be very hard on me for this because he'd call this wishful thinking analysis. He'd say, well, you want your opponent to take your rook, so you're assuming they're going to do it. But let's say black says, well, I don't want to take your rook, I'm going to take your knight. Uh-oh. Now you have a rook attacked, you have a knight attacked. Things are not so easy, right? So you want to avoid engaging in wishful thinking analysis. Make sure your opponent is forced to do what you want them to do. Don't assume they're going to walk down your path. Yeah.
D6.
Which one? It's hard to choose between knights usually.
The one that's on D4.
Yeah, I think he played the f5 one. And I think the reason is because after this move, this pawn is still hanging. Whereas after this move, the rook defends. See that? So I think his move is slightly more accurate. But that's how you choose between them. It's usually very subtle things, but it's not easy. It's the same thing. Say you have to move a rook to the open file. Which one do you choose? It's a really hard decision. And it just takes a lot of practice, and usually you use logic. Like in this case, again, the logic is, well, my rook wants to defend the pawn. So black took. White took with what? Yeah. Bishop. No, what did white take with?
Oh.
White takes back the bishop, right? Well, if pawn, remember, you have a rook hanging. Doesn't do well to forget about this. So you take with what? Very good. Because it's still check. Move. Now what? Yep. So rook takes g7. Again, looks like a logical move, right? But what happens after queen takes e5 check? I hit your rook now and your king. There's a fork, but yeah, this is a fork, right? And you're in check, so you don't have time to play knight takes pawn and fork me. See that? So again, make sure you're not allowing your opponent to do anything that they want to do. Make sure that you have their threats covered. But, do you have any tempo moves? Do you have attacking moves to get stuff out for free? Yes? Great move. So, it's a tempo move, right? It forces, so black would love to take your rook, right? But he can't because the queen's attacked already. The bishop's defended by the knight, the pawn's defended by the rook, so black really doesn't have any great moves here. So we tried queen to e7. Now what? Yep. Right. Because now the knight's defended by the bishop, right? And notice how once again black doesn't get a single move to do what he wants to do. He's just responding to everything that Morphy does. So, king moves to c7. Now what? Yep. Very nice move. So one of the things is, when you're attacking, do you usually want to trade queens? No, right? Because if you trade queens when you're attacking, it usually makes your attack less strong. A queen's your best attacking piece. But in this case, Morphy has something very specific in mind. There's queen d6 check. So black takes the queen. Now he recaptures with what? Yep, pawn. So is it checkmate? It's close. The king can escape. So now what? Orange shirt.
Knight take H8.
That would be a perfectly good move. You're taking a rook, you're threatening to take the knight. But remember, Morphy has the initiative, right? He doesn't want to give up his initiative. He wants to keep attacking. So?
Rook B5.
Rook b5 is possible. However, I hope you have an idea after pawn takes rook. Remember, make sure your opponent can't capture you, right? One of the number one rules. Yeah. Very nice. So the king is running out of squares, right? Its only move is pawn to c5. Now what? Yep.
Bishop takes c5.
Very good. So if black tries king c6, white has a very nice move. Superman? It's all right. Yep.
98.
Very good. And that is,
Checkmate.
that's a pretty cool checkmate, huh? Now, here's another common mistake people make. They think 95 is also checkmate. But what's the problem now? Yeah. Right. You're blocking your own piece. This is a very, very common mistake when people, not necessarily on this move, but when people are calculating ahead, they miss that their own pieces can block one another. So make sure you don't make the same mistake. Make sure you're really focused and make sure you're aware of what pieces are blocking what. So knight d8 is that's a pretty cool checkmate, huh? That would have been a nice way to end the game, I think. But black opted to play this move instead. So now, all these threatening moves, right? Here, white finds a really nice way to end the game. Yep.
Pawn b4.
Pawn b4 is a very tempting move. So what do you do after king a4?
Oh, yeah.
Run away. Forrest Gump has nothing on this king. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you have a way to checkmate here. You could play bishop check. So if the king moves back here, I'm pretty sure you should have mate. Check. Oh, this is cool. So if king here, there's a mate again, right? So you have check, check, and then what's the final checkmate? Yeah. Yeah. That would be pretty cool, huh? Yeah, bishop d5 fails to knight c6, but knight d8 is a cool checkmate. But I don't see a checkmate here, at least not immediately. Now, I could very well be missing it, because this is a weird position. You can check here, check here, but somehow this silly king, it's hard to checkmate, isn't it? Now, I don't doubt there is one, but I at least don't see it. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure there is a mate, but yeah, I know. Watch. This is great. This is totally unnecessary. So king here, right? So I'll take my rook. Pawn up, so I'm threatening bishop d4 checkmate. See that? It's got to take my other rook, and then I play king here. Now I'm threatening this checkmate. So he brings his rook over. Now I threaten this checkmate, and he loses. I made all that up. It could be wrong. That's a pretty cool checkmate, though, huh? Never ever do this, by the way. Just win easily. Don't make your life hard. So he actually won in 2 moves, rather than this. But you have to admit, though, the b4, b5 checkmate's pretty cool, huh? Morphy wishes he could have checkmated that way, but he found a simpler way. Yep. Sorry? Bishop to a3. So that's indeed a check. And what happens if I take your rook? Remember, one of the keys is if you check your opponent, always make sure they can't take your checking piece. If they can take the piece that's checking them, they get it a check, right? So be very careful. Morphy found a quiet move. Now, when you're attacking, usually you want to play forcing attacking moves, right? That's usually the way you go. But sometimes a quiet move. Now, I wouldn't call this move quiet because it does threaten checkmate, but it's a subtle move. A move which doesn't take anything, doesn't check anything, but makes a threat that just cannot be stopped. Yes? A4. So A4 threatens B4 checkmate? Is that your idea? That looks like a very good move. So okay, let's say I play knight to c6. I'm going to try to stay alive here. BG style. Never mind, wrong crowd. All right. Maybe c3? Threatening b4. That's a cool checkmate. I like your checkmate a lot. He found a much simpler one, though. So, these two bishops do a beautiful job, right? They keep this king pinned along the edge. So all you have to do is what? Think you got it now? Yeah.
Pawn b4.
Very nice. So it's a subtle move, right? But it gets the rook from out under the attack, and now rook a3, that's checkmate, right? How does black stop it? If you can't find it, you're not doing anything wrong. There's no way to stop it. Do you see a way to stop it? That's true. Resigning is a sure way to stop your opponent from checkmating you. But in this case, he played b5, and now the checkmate. Everyone? Rook a3. And that ends the game. So, what did we learn from this game? Can anyone tell me a few things? Other than the fact that Morphy was a really cool chess player, what else did we learn? If you want to look for cool checkmating patterns, check out Morphy's games. He did a lot of them. Part of it's because his opponents were not nearly as good as him. At least a lot of them weren't. So a lot of his games end in really brutal checkmates, which are very cool. These days, it's harder to get a checkmate like that because opponents resign and because people are, in general, a little bit stronger now. Yeah?
That not everyone's good. Like, even the best chess player.
Very right. He was the best player of his time, and by quite a ways. But even he made mistakes, right? He missed queen b4 check. Could happen to anyone. Now, maybe it was a blitz game. Maybe his opponent was so much weaker, he was, talking to someone, having a drink while playing his game. Who knows? But probably he just missed it. Queen b4 check. Easy move to miss. So make sure that you're always on the lookout for your opponent's ideas. No matter how bad their position is, they can always surprise you. Yeah? Not to bring your queen out early. If there was any example of why you shouldn't do that, this game seems perfect, right? All black did was move around the queen. That's all he did all game. He didn't move any other piece. Think about that. No other piece of black's got moved except for bishop takes knight, right?
And a couple of pawns.
And pawns. All his pieces stay in the back rank. So do not bring your queen out early unless you have a really good reason for it, basically. There are exceptions to every rule in chess, I would say, but that's one where you really want to avoid it. Also, the power of the initiative, right? If you can force your opponent to do what you want, if you can attack them, if you can keep attacking them, they're far less likely to do any damage to you. And you're probably going to be controlling the game, which is usually good for you.